Hey Reddit, I need to get this off my chest because I'm still processing everything that's happened over the past few months. This is going to be a long story, but I promise it's worth the read if you stick with me. Before I start, drop a comment and let me know where you're from. I'm curious about this community. And after reading this whole thing, please tell me honestly what you would have done in my situation. I read every single comment and really value your perspectives. So here's the deal. I'm 24F, living in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've been stuck in what I now realize was a completely toxic and financially abusive situation with my family for way too long. This story is about how I finally found the courage to break free and the absolute chaos that followed. Background and setup. Let me paint you a picture of my life before everything changed. I lived, with my father Robert, 52, my stepmother Linda, 48, and my stepbrother Marcus, 26. My biological mother died when I was 12, and Robert married Linda when I was 15. From the beginning, Linda made it clear that I was an inconvenience in their new family dynamic. I work as a medical technician at a hospital lab, making about $2,800 per month after taxes. It's not amazing money, but it's honest work, and I genuinely enjoy helping people. What you need to understand is that since I turned 18, my family has been systematically draining me financially while treating me like a leave-in servant. Here's how it worked. Robert would take $1,800 out of my monthly paycheck under the guise of contributing to household expenses. On top of that, I was responsible for buying all the groceries, paying the electric bill, internet, and even Marcus's car insurance and phone bill because he's been between jobs for the past year and a half. Linda didn't work either, claiming she had chronic fatigue that prevented her from holding down employment, though she seemed to have plenty of energy for shopping trips and long lunch dates with her friends. Meanwhile, Robert worked part-time at a local hardware store, bringing in maybe $1,200 a month, which apparently all went to essential expenses that I never saw itemized. The math didn't add up, but every time I questioned it, I was told I was being ungrateful and that family takes care of family. They had this way of making me feel guilty for even asking where my money was going. But the financial abuse wasn't the worst part. The emotional manipulation was constant and exhausting. Linda would make passive-aggressive comments about how I never helped around the house, while I was literally doing everyone's laundry, cleaning the kitchen after dinner, and maintaining the yard on weekends. Marcus would borrow my car for days at a time without asking, and when I objected, Robert would lecture me about being selfish and not thinking about family. I felt trapped. Every dollar I earned was spoken for before I even got my paycheck. I had no savings, no emergency fund, and no way to move out because they'd convinced me I couldn't afford to live on my own. The breaking point. Everything came to a head 3 weeks ago at Linda's 48th birthday barbecue. They'd invited half the neighborhood, including my co-workers from the hospital, who I'd stupidly mentioned were nice people during a family dinner. The backyard was packed with people, the smell of barbecue filling the air, everyone laughing and having a good time. I was helping serve food, making sure everyone had drinks, basically playing hostess while Linda held court by the pool, soaking up compliments about her beautiful party that I'd spent my entire weekend preparing for. That's when Robert decided to make his grand announcement. "Hey everybody," he called out, his voice cutting through the conversations as he raised his beer bottle. "I've got something to share with y'all." My stomach immediately dropped. I knew that tone. It was the same one he used when he was about to humiliate me for his own entertainment. "Our little Jessica here," he continued, gesturing toward me with his beer, "thinks she can live rent-free in our house forever." The conversations around the yard started to quiet down as people turned to listen. I felt my face burning with embarrassment. "So I told her, honey, you're 24 years old. Time to pay rent like an adult or find your own place." He threw his head back and laughed like he'd just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. The laughter that followed felt like physical blows. Linda was practically cackling, her hand over her mouth in mock surprise. Marcus, who was sprawled in a lawn chair with a beer in each hand, both of which I'd paid for, was grinning and shaking his head like I was the most ridiculous person alive. But the worst part was seeing my co-workers' faces. Sarah from the lab looked confused and uncomfortable. Dr. Martinez was staring at his plate like he wished he could disappear. These were people I respected, people I worked with every day. And now they were witnessing my father publicly humiliate me in front of a crowd. "She's been freeloading long enough," Robert continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "Time to learn some responsibility. Here's what nobody at that barbecue knew. I'd been paying $1,800 a month into their household for 6 years. That's over $129,000 of my hard-earned money that had disappeared into their lifestyle while I lived like a pauper in my childhood bedroom, wearing the same clothes I'd bought in high school and eating ramen for lunch because I couldn't afford anything else. I stood there holding a plate of potato salad, watching these people who were supposed to love and protect me turn me into their entertainment for a yard full of neighbours. The humiliation was so complete, so public, that something inside me just snapped. I set the plate down slowly on the nearest table, my hands surprisingly steady despite the rage building in my chest. "You want me out?" I said, my voice cutting through the laughter. "Fine." The yard went quiet. Robert's smirk faltered slightly, like he wasn't expecting me to respond. "But when I go," I continued, my voice getting stronger, "my money goes with me. All of it." Robert laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. "Good luck with that, sweetheart. You've got no savings, no credit, no backup plan. You'll come crawling back within a week, begging us to take you back." What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been planning my escape for over a year. Every spare penny I could hide, every overtime shift I could pick up, every tax refund and birthday check from distant relatives had been going into a secret savings account that they didn't know existed. What he really didn't know was that I'd closed on a small house across town just 4 days earlier. The keys were sitting in my purse at that very moment. I looked around the yard at all the faces staring at me. Neighbours who'd known me since I was a kid, co-workers who were seeing a side of my family they'd never witnessed before, extended relatives who'd always suspected something was wrong, but never said anything. "We'll see about that," I said calmly, and walked into the house. I could hear the murmur of uncomfortable conversations starting up behind me as people tried to process what they'd just witnessed. Linda's voice rose above the rest. "Don't mind her, everyone! She's just going through a phase!" The Great Escape, I went straight to my room and started packing. Not everything. I didn't want to tip them off, just the essentials. Important documents, medications, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, and the few pieces of jewellery my mother had left me that I'd managed to keep hidden from Linda's sticky fingers over the years. The party continued outside for another 3 hours. I could hear the laughter and music while I methodically sorted through my belongings, deciding what was worth taking and what I could live without. It was surprisingly easy. When you've been living on scraps for years, you don't accumulate much stuff. Around midnight, after the last guest had left and the house had finally gone quiet, I loaded my car with my essentials. I left a note on my pillow that simply said, "Gone to find somewhere that appreciates rent payments. Thanks for the motivation." By 1 a.m., I was standing in the kitchen of my new place, a small but beautiful 2-bedroom house with hardwood floors, a real kitchen with updated appliances, and most importantly, a deadbolt that only I had the key to. I'd been looking at this house for 3 months, saving every penny for the down payment, going through the mortgage approval process in secret. The real estate agent thought I was crazy for being so secretive about it, but I told her I wanted to surprise my family. In a way, I guess I did. I spent my first night of freedom sitting on the floor of my empty living room, eating Chinese takeout straight from the container and planning my next moves. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe, cutting the financial cord. The next morning, I woke up early and started making phone calls. This was the part I'd been planning for months, and I had a detailed list of every account, service, and bill that needed to be transferred or cancelled. First call. Electric company. "Hi, I need to remove my name from the account at old address, effective immediately, and transfer service to my new address." The customer service representative was very helpful, especially when I explained that I was no longer living at the old address and wouldn't be responsible for future bills. She made the change on the spot. Second call. Gas company. Same process. Same result. Third call, internet and cable. This one was particularly satisfying because I knew Marcus spent 12 plus hours a day playing online games and streaming videos. Yes, I'd like to cancel service at old address and start new service at my new location. Fourth call, water and sewer. Another easy transfer. Fifth call, car insurance. This was where it got interesting. I need to remove Marcus Chen from my policy immediately and change my address. The insurance agent informed me that without Marcus on my policy, his car wouldn't be covered. When I told her that was no longer my problem, she paused and asked if I was sure. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. Sixth call, cell phone company. I'd been paying for a family plan that include all 4 of us. I want to remove 3 lines from my account and just keep my own number. By noon, I'd systematically removed myself from every shared account and bill. The house that had been running on my income was now going to have to figure out how to function without it. My phone started buzzing around 2 p.m. Dad calling. I declined. Linda calling. I declined. Marcus texting. The internet isn't working and the electric company called about a past due notice. What's going on? I sent one group text to all 3 of them. I moved out like you wanted. All bills are now your responsibility. Please don't contact me unless it's an emergency. Then I turned off my phone and went grocery shopping for my new place. Do you know how amazing it feels to buy name brand cereal when you've been eating store brand everything for 6 years? It felt like luxury. The immediate fallout that evening. I was arranging furniture in my new living room when I heard a truck door slam outside. Through my front window, I saw all three of them climbing out of Robert's pickup truck. Their faces a mixture of anger and disbelief. I met them on my front porch, and the look on Robert's face was worth every penny I'd spent on this house. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, gesturing at my house like it was a personal insult. "It's called independence," I replied calmly. "You told me to pay rent or get out. I chose option 3. Linda stepped forward, her voice shrill with panic. "You can't just abandon your family, Jessica. We depend on you." "Depend on me?" I laughed, and it felt good to laugh at her for once. "You mean you depend on my money? There's a difference." Marcus, who'd been surprisingly quiet up until this point, finally found his voice. "This is so screwed up, Jess. We're family. You can't just leave us hanging like this." "Family?" I looked at him incredulously. "When's the last time you treated me like family, Marcus? When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing or thanked me for paying your bills? Or showed any interest in my life beyond what I could provide financially?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Robert stepped closer, using the intimidation tactics that had worked on me when I was younger. "You think you're so smart? You think this little stunt is going to teach us a lesson? You'll be back. You can't afford this place on your own." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Watch me." "You're destroying this family," Linda shrieked. "Your mother would be ashamed of you." That was a low blow, even for her. My mother had been dead for 12 years, and Linda knew exactly how much that loss still hurt me. "My mother," I said slowly, "would be proud that I finally stood up for myself. She would never have let people treat me like a walking ATM." They spent another 20 minutes trying different tactics, guilt, threats, promises that things would change if I just came back. But I held firm. Eventually, they climbed back into Robert's truck and drove away, leaving me standing on my porch in the Arizona sunset, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The manipulation campaign begins. The next few days were blissfully quiet. I woke up when I wanted to. I ate what I wanted. I watched what I wanted on TV without someone complaining about my choices. I remembered what it felt like to live without constantly walking on eggshells, but I should have known it wouldn't last. The manipulation campaign started subtly. Linda began posting vague Facebook statuses about ungrateful children and family loyalty. She'd share those generic memes about how blood is thicker than water and how you only get one family. The comments from relatives and family friends who didn't know the full story were exactly what she was fishing for. "What happened? Are you okay? Family is everything. I hope you can work this out. Some people just don't understand sacrifice." She never mentioned my name directly, but everyone in our social circle knew exactly who she was talking about. It was a masterclass in passive-aggressive manipulation. My phone started ringing with calls from extended family. My Aunt Patricia called to lecture me about honoring my father. My cousin David texted asking if I was having some kind of breakdown because this behavior was so unlike me. The thing is, they were right. It was unlike the old me. The old me would have caved within 48 hours, overwhelmed by guilt and desperate to make everyone happy again. The old me would have apologized for standing up for myself and gone back to being their personal ATM, but I wasn't that person anymore. Financial fraud discovered. A week after I moved out, I got a call from my bank that changed everything. The fraud detection department had flagged some suspicious activity on an old joint checking account that I'd completely forgotten about. It was an account Robert had opened for me when I turned 18, supposedly to teach me about banking, but I hadn't used it in years. "Miss Chen," the bank representative said, "we're showing 3 attempted wire transfers from your account, totaling $4,500 over the past month. Did you authorize these transactions?" My blood ran cold. "No, I absolutely did not. Can you tell me where the money was supposed to go?" The transfers had been attempted to various creditors, a credit card company, a payday loan service, and something called Phoenix Auto Finance. All companies I'd never done business with. I drove to the bank immediately and met with a fraud specialist. When we pulled up the account history, I discovered that Robert had been using this forgotten account as his personal piggy bank for months. Small withdrawals here and there, just under the amounts that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. "There's something else," the specialist said, pulling up another screen. "This social security number is associated with several other accounts that you might not be aware of." That's when I found out about the credit cards. 3 store credit cards and 1 major credit card, all in my name, all with balances totaling nearly $8,000. The addresses were a mix of my old family home and a P.O. box I'd never opened. The purchases were a timeline of my family's lifestyle over the past 2 years. Furniture, electronics, clothes, even a vacation to Las Vegas that I definitely hadn't taken. I sat in that bank cubicle staring at printouts of my stolen identity and felt something I'd never experienced before. Pure, crystalline rage. Not the hot, emotional anger I'd felt at the barbecue, but something cold and calculating. My own family had been systematically stealing my identity and destroying my credit while I lived under their roof, paying their bills and asking for nothing in return. I called a lawyer that afternoon. The legal battle begins. Attorney Sarah Morrison specialized in family financial abuse cases. When I walked into her office with a folder full of bank statements, credit reports, and documented evidence of identity theft, she whistled low under her breath. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, flipping through the papers. "The financial abuse? 6 years. The identity theft? At least 2 years that I can prove." She leaned back in her chair and studied me carefully. "Jessica, what they've done to you isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal. We're talking about identity theft, credit fraud, and financial elder abuse." "I'm only 24, I said, confused. "Financial abuse doesn't have an age requirement," she explained. "What matters is that they use their position of trust and authority to exploit you financially. The fact that you were living in their home and they were taking your income under false pretenses makes this a clear-cut case." We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Every bill I'd paid, every account they'd opened in my name, every instance of financial coercion I could remember. Sarah took detailed notes and explained my options. "You have grounds for both civil and criminal cases," she said. "The criminal case would be handled by the district attorney's office. They'd face charges for identity theft and fraud. The civil case would be you suing them for damages and restitution." I thought about it for all of 10 seconds. "Let's do both." That evening, Marcus texted me, "Dad's freaking out because the mortgage payment bounced. Hope you're happy." I screenshotted the message and added it to my growing file of evidence. Sarah had advised me to save every communication, every threat, every attempt at manipulation. It was all going to be useful in court. Workplace drama. 2 weeks after I moved out, my peaceful new life was disrupted in the worst possible way. I was having lunch in the hospital cafeteria when one of my co-workers, Janet, sat down across from me with a concerned expression. "Hey Jess, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything okay at home? Your dad came by the lab looking for you yesterday." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "He what?" "He said there was a family emergency and he needed to speak with you urgently. Dr. Rodriguez told him he couldn't give out your schedule, but your dad got pretty aggressive about it. Security had to escort him out." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Of course he couldn't just leave me alone at work. Of course he had to bring his drama to the one place I felt competent and respected. "There's no emergency," I told Janet. "We're having some family issues right now, and I've asked them not to contact me. If he shows up again, please just call security immediately." But Robert wasn't done. The next day he showed up during my shift change, waiting in the parking lot by my car. When I came out at 7 p.m. after a long day, he was leaning against my Honda Civic like he owned it. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "No, we don't," I replied, pulling out my phone. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm your father," he said, his voice rising. "You can't just cut me out of your life like this. We need to work this out." "The time to work it out was before you committed fraud in my name," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "Now it's a legal matter." His face darkened. "Legal matter? You're going to sue your own family after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "Name one thing you've done for me in the past 6 years that didn't involve spending my money." He couldn't answer that, so he tried a different approach. "Your mother would be disgusted with you. She raised you better than this." "My mother raised me to stand up for myself," I shot back. "She taught me that I deserve to be treated with respect, something you never learned." Security showed up then. Janet had seen the confrontation from the window and called them. As they escorted Robert off the property, he shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over, Jessica! You can't run from your family forever!" I filed a police report that night and requested a restraining order the next morning. The restraining order hearing. The restraining order hearing was held 3 weeks after I moved out. I sat in the courthouse waiting room, clutching my folder of evidence, while Sarah reviewed our strategy one more time. "Remember," she said, "stick to the facts. Don't let them bait you into an emotional response. The judge needs to see that you're the reasonable party here." When our case was called, I was surprised to see that Robert had brought his own lawyer, a tired-looking man in an ill-fitting suit who kept shuffling through papers like he was seeing them for the first time. The hearing lasted about an hour. I testified about the workplace harassment, the financial abuse, and the identity theft. I presented bank statements, credit reports, and text messages showing the ongoing harassment. Robert's lawyer tried to argue that this was just a family dispute that should be handled privately, not through the court system. He painted me as an ungrateful daughter who was trying to destroy her family over money. But the evidence spoke for itself. When the judge saw the credit card statements and bank records, his expression grew increasingly stern. "Mr. Chen," he said, addressing Robert directly, These financial records suggest a pattern of exploitation that goes far beyond normal family financial arrangements. The defendant has clearly established grounds for protection from further harassment. The restraining order was granted. Robert had to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. As we left the courthouse, Robert's lawyer pulled Sarah aside for a brief conversation. When she came back to me, she was smiling. "They want to settle," she said. The settlement negotiations took place over the following month. Robert's lawyer kept trying to minimize the damage, claiming that the identity theft was a misunderstanding and that I had implicitly consented to the financial arrangements by living in their home. Sarah shut that down quickly. "Your client stole over $130,000 from my client over 6 years, plus another $8,000 in fraudulent credit card debt. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's systematic financial abuse." The back and forth was exhausting. They'd make lowball offers, we'd counter with documentation of actual damages, they'd claim poverty, we'd point out that they'd been living above their means on my income for years. Finally, Sarah made it clear that we were prepared to go to trial and pursue criminal charges if they didn't agree to a reasonable settlement. The final agreement was this: they would pay restitution of $75,000 over the next 5 years, all fraudulent accounts would be closed and the debt forgiven, and they would stay away from me permanently. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges. It wasn't everything they owed me, but it was enough to validate that what they'd done was wrong, and it would help me rebuild my financial future. Life after liberation. 6 months have passed since I moved out, and the transformation in my life has been incredible. Let me break down what freedom actually looks like. Financially, for the first time in my adult life, I can see my entire paycheck. After paying my mortgage, utilities, groceries, and other actual necessities, I have over $1,000 left each month for savings, entertainment, and building my future. I've already built up a 6-month emergency fund, and I'm contributing to a retirement account for the first time ever. Emotionally, the constant stress and anxiety that I've been living with for years is gone. I sleep better. I'm not constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for the next financial crisis that I'll be expected to solve. I can make plans for my future without worrying about how they'll affect my family's lifestyle. Socially, I've started dating again. His name is David, and he's a nurse practitioner I met at a hospital mixer. When I told him about my family situation, he was horrified, but also proud of me for standing up for myself. It's amazing to be with someone who values me for who I am, not what I can provide. Professionally, I got a promotion at work. Turns out that when you're not exhausted from family drama and financial stress, you can actually focus on your career. I'm now a senior lab technician with a $200 a month raise and better benefits. The current state of my former family. Through mutual acquaintances, I've heard bits and pieces about how they're doing. Robert found a full-time job at a warehouse, working 50+ hours a week to make ends meet. Apparently he's bitter about it and complains constantly about having to work so hard at his age. Linda got a part-time job at a retail store. The chronic fatigue that prevented her from working for years mysteriously disappeared when she needed to contribute to the household income. Marcus is still unemployed, but he's at least no longer my financial responsibility. I heard he had to sell his gaming console to help with rent 1 month, which made me smile a little. They've moved to a smaller apartment across town. The house they'd been living in, which was actually a rental, was foreclosed on when they couldn't make the payments without my income. The guilt and how I handle it. I won't lie, there are still moments when I feel guilty. Usually late at night when I'm lying in my comfortable bed in my quiet house, I'll think about them struggling to pay bills and wonder if I should help. But then I remember the laughter at that barbecue when Robert humiliated me in front of our neighbours. The years of being treated like a live-in ATM machine rather than a daughter, the identity theft and credit fraud they committed while I was paying their bills, the complete lack of appreciation or respect for everything I sacrificed for them, the fact that even now, 6 months later, none of them have apologised or acknowledged what they did wrong. Those memories remind me that guilt is just programming. They trained me to feel responsible for their problems and their happiness, but I'm not responsible for the consequences of their choices. The extended family drama. The extended family drama has been interesting to navigate. Linda's manipulation campaign on social media was initially effective. I had several relatives reach out to lecture me about family loyalty and forgiveness. But the truth has a way of coming out. When Aunt Patricia called to give me a guilt trip about abandoning my family in their time of need, I calmly explained the actual financial arrangements I'd been living under. "Wait," she said, "you were paying $1,800 a month, but Linda told me you were living there rent-free and refusing to contribute anything." I sent her copies of bank statements showing the years of payments I'd made. She called me back an hour later to apologise and ask if there was anything she could do to help me. The same thing happened with several other relatives. Once they learned the truth about what had been happening, the narrative completely shifted. Instead of pressure to reconcile, I started getting messages of support and congratulations for standing up for myself. My grandmother on my mother's side, who I hadn't spoken to in years because Robert claimed she didn't want to see me, reached out after hearing about the situation through the family grapevine. Turns out Robert had been telling her I was too busy to visit and didn't want to be bothered with old people. We had lunch last month, and she cried when she learned about what I'd been going through. She told me my mother would be proud of me for having the courage to break free from that situation. Lessons learned and advice for others. If you're reading this and recognizing your own situation, here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. Financial abuse is real abuse. It doesn't matter if they're family. Taking someone's income under false pretenses and using guilt and manipulation to control them is abuse, period. You don't owe anyone your financial security. Family helps family, but that doesn't mean one person should carry the entire financial burden while others contribute nothing. Love and money are separate things. If someone only treats you well when you're financially useful to them, they don't actually love you. They love what you can do for them. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. I spent years thinking that if I just gave them enough money, they'd get back on their feet and things would improve. But they weren't trying to improve. They were perfectly happy living off my income. Guilt is not a reason to stay in an abusive situation. Abusers are expert at making their victims feel guilty for setting boundaries. That guilt is programming, not genuine moral obligation. Document everything. If you're planning to leave a financially abusive situation, start keeping records immediately. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, emails, everything that shows the pattern of abuse. You deserve better. This one took me the longest to believe, but you deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. You deserve to keep the money you earn. You deserve to be treated with respect and appreciation. The unexpected, positive outcomes. There have been some wonderful, unexpected benefits to standing up for myself. My relationship with my coworkers has improved dramatically. Turns out that when you're not constantly stressed about money and family drama, you're a much more pleasant person to be around. Several colleagues have commented on how much happier and more confident I seem. I've reconnected with old friends who I'd lost touch with over the years. I realized I'd been isolating myself because I was embarrassed about my living situation and couldn't afford to go out and do things. Now I have an active social life again. I've discovered hobbies and interests I'd forgotten I had. I'm taking a photography class, learning to cook properly instead of just heating up whatever was cheapest. And I even joined a hiking group that explores the beautiful desert trails around Phoenix. Most surprisingly, I've become something of an inspiration to other people in similar situations. Word has gotten around about what I did, and I've had 3 different people reach out to me for advice about their own family financial abuse situations. Being able to help others escape similar circumstances has been incredibly fulfilling. The legal case wrapped up last month. Robert, Linda, and Marcus all had to attend a hearing where they formally acknowledged the financial abuse and identity theft. Watching them sit in that courtroom looking small and ashamed was more satisfying than I'd expected. The restitution payments have started arriving, $1,250 per month for the next 5 years. It's not everything they took from me, but it's enough to make a real difference in my life. I'm using the money to accelerate my mortgage payments and build up investments for my future. More importantly, the legal victory validated everything I'd been through. A judge looked at the evidence and confirmed that what they did to me was wrong, illegal, and inexcusable. That validation has been worth more than money. Current status and future plans. As I write this update, I'm sitting in my home office. Yes, I have a home office now, on a Saturday morning. The sun is streaming through the windows. My cat, I adopted a sweet tabby named Luna, is sleeping on my desk. And I'm drinking good coffee while planning my day. Tonight I'm going to dinner with David to celebrate the 6-month anniversary of our relationship. Tomorrow I'm hiking with my photography group. Next weekend I'm driving up to Sedona for a girls' trip with some friends from work. These might sound like small things, but they represent a freedom I never thought I'd have. The freedom to spend my time and money on things that bring me joy instead of supporting people who took me for granted. Future plans. I'm looking into going back to school to get my bachelor's degree in medical technology. With my finances finally stable, I can afford to invest in my education and career advancement. David and I are talking about moving in together next year. It's terrifying and exciting to think about building a life with someone who actually values and respects me. I'm planning a trip to Europe next summer, something I've always dreamed of but never thought I could afford. I'm considering writing a book about financial abuse in families. There are so many people in situations like mine who don't realize that what's happening to them isn't normal or acceptable. To my former family, if you're reading this, I know you're probably angry about this post. You're probably planning to call me dramatic or vindictive or attention-seeking. You might even try to contact me again despite the restraining order. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about revenge. This is about healing and helping other people recognize financial abuse when they see it. I spent 6 years of my life supporting you financially while you treated me like garbage. I gave you my youth, my money, and my emotional well-being. And you repaid me with theft, manipulation, and public humiliation. The three of you are now living the life you should have been living all along, working to support yourselves, taking responsibility for your own bills, making sacrifices to make ends meet. This is what normal adults do. This is what I was doing while also supporting all of you. I don't hate you. I actually hope you're learning and growing from this experience. But I will never again allow you to use me as your personal ATM machine, and I will never again prioritize your comfort over my own well-being. To everyone who's been following this story, thank you for all the support, advice, and encouragement. Your comments and messages have meant more to me than you know, especially during those first few weeks when I was questioning whether I'd done the right thing. To the people who called me selfish or heartless, I understand why you feel that way. Family is important, and walking away from family feels wrong on a visceral level. But I hope you never have to learn the difference between being loved and being used. And if you do, I hope you find the courage to choose yourself. To everyone who shared their own stories of family financial abuse, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you deserve better. It's never too late to start putting yourself first. The bottom line. 6 months ago, I was a 24-year-old woman living like an indentured servant in her father's house, handing over most of her paycheck every month and getting nothing but criticism and disrespect in return. Today, I'm a homeowner with a growing savings account, a loving relationship, a thriving career, and most importantly, my self-respect intact. I went from being an ATM with legs to being a free woman living her own life on her own terms. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep ungrateful people warm and discovered that the flames I'd been smothering were the ones that could light up my own future. The best part? This is just the beginning. For the first time in my adult life, I'm excited about what comes next, instead of dreading the next financial crisis I'll be expected to solve. Life's too short to spend it making other people comfortable at your own expense. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to stop enabling their dysfunction and force them to face the consequences of their choices. I choose me, and I've never been happier. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Thank you all for the gold, silver, and supportive comments. I'm trying to respond to as many as I can. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking for updates on how my former family is doing. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that they're struggling, but surviving. Robert is still working at the warehouse, Linda kept her retail job, and Marcus finally found work doing food delivery. They're all having to live like actual adults for the first time in years. It's what should have happened a long time ago. Edit 3. To everyone asking about the restitution payments, yes, they're actually making them on time so far. I think the threat of criminal charges is providing good motivation. Edit 4. For those asking about my mother, she died of cancer when I was 12. Robert married Linda 3 years later. I think my mother would be proud that I finally found the strength to stand up for myself, but I'll never know for sure. Thank you all for reading and for the incredible support. Stay strong, everyone.